What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved stars comes face to face with The View's most notorious host? You won't believe what unfolds when Julia Roberts sits down expecting a friendly chat about her latest project, only to find herself trapped in Joy Behar's crosshairs. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly television can turn from pleasant small talk into an all-out verbal warfare that left viewers stunned, and one A-list actress heading straight for the exit. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Joy Behar decides to turn what should have been a promotional appearance into her personal courtroom. The atmosphere in the View studio was electric. As Julia Roberts made her entrance, that million-dollar smile lighting up the set as she settled into the guest chair. Wearing an elegant navy blazer and looking every bit the Hollywood royalty she's become, Roberts seemed genuinely pleased to be there, exchanging warm pleasantries with the panel. The other co-hosts were clearly delighted to have her, Whoopi Goldberg cracking jokes about Pretty Woman, Sarah Haynes gushing about Roberts' latest Netflix film, and even the usually reserved Alyssa Farah Griffin seemed starstruck. But Joy Behar sat there with a different energy entirely. While her co-hosts engaged in the typical celebrity worship that comes with having a megastar on the show, Behar's expression remained stone cold, her arms crossed, watching Roberts with the intensity of a prosecutor sizing up a defendant. The contrast was stark and uncomfortable. Everyone else was treating Roberts like the beloved icon she is, while Behar looked like she was preparing for battle. "Julia, darling, you look absolutely radiant," Whoopi began, trying to set the tone for what should have been a light promotional segment. "Tell us about this new project you're working on." Roberts launched into her practiced spiel about her latest romantic comedy, her eyes sparkling as she described working with her co-star and the challenges of filming during the current Hollywood climate. She was charming, funny, and completely at ease. Exactly what you'd expect from someone who's been doing this dance for over 3 decades. The audience was eating it up, laughing at her stories about on-set mishaps and nodding along as she discussed the importance of feel-good movies in today's world. But throughout Roberts' cheerful monologue, Joy Behar remained ominously silent, her lips pursed in what could only be described as barely contained disdain. She wasn't asking follow-up questions, wasn't laughing at the funny anecdotes, wasn't even pretending to be interested. Instead, she was clearly waiting for her moment to pounce. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. "Julia?" Behar interrupted mid-sentence, her voice cutting through Robert's story like a knife. "Let's talk about something real for once, instead of this promotional fluff." The studio fell silent. Robert's smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering across her features. The other co-hosts exchanged worried glances. They knew that tone, and they knew it meant trouble. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the shift, zooming in slightly to catch every micro-expression. "I'm sorry," Roberts replied, trying to maintain her composure but clearly caught off guard by the sudden change in direction. "Oh, come on," Behar continued, leaning forward in her chair like a shark smelling blood in the water. "You're sitting here talking about romantic comedies and feel-good movies, while there are serious issues happening in this country. Don't you think it's a little tone-deaf to be promoting escapist entertainment when people are struggling?" Roberts blinked, clearly processing what was happening. This wasn't the interview she'd signed up for. Her publicist, visible just off camera, looked like she was about to have a heart attack. The other View hosts were practically vibrating with discomfort, but none of them dared interrupt Behar when she was in attack mode. "Well, Joy," Roberts began carefully, her voice still pleasant but with a slight edge creeping in, "I think people need joy and laughter in their lives, especially during difficult times. Entertainment has always served that purpose, to give people a break from their troubles, to remind them that happiness is possible." But Behar wasn't having it. She rolled her eyes dramatically, a gesture so dismissive it made several audience members gasp audibly. "That's such a privileged response," Behar shot back, her voice dripping with condescension. "Easy to talk about spreading joy when you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars and living in your Malibu mansion. What about the people who can't afford to escape to the movies? What about the people dealing with real problems that your little rom-coms aren't going to solve?" The tension in the studio was now palpable. Robert's famous smile had completely disappeared. replaced by a look of genuine bewilderment and growing anger. She'd been ambushed on live television, and she was starting to realize it. "Joy, I don't understand why you're being so hostile," Robert said, her voice still controlled but her posture straightening defensively. "I came here to talk about my work, to hopefully bring some positivity to your viewers' day. I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here." "What I'm trying to accomplish," Behar replied, her voice rising slightly, "is getting you to acknowledge reality instead of hiding behind this carefully crafted Hollywood image. You want to talk about your work? Let's talk about how you've used your platform. Or rather, how you haven't used it." The other co-hosts were now actively uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and looking anywhere but at the unfolding disaster. Whoopi tried to interject with a joke to lighten the mood, but Behar steamrolled right over her, clearly intent on continuing her unexpected assault. Roberts was no longer trying to hide her confusion and frustration. This was supposed to be a friendly promotional appearance, the kind she'd done hundreds of times before. Instead, she found herself being interrogated by someone who seemed determined to make her the villain of some story she didn't even understand. "Joy, I really don't know what you want me to say here," Roberts said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You seem to have already decided I'm somehow failing as a person because I make movies that make people happy. I'm sorry if that offends you, but I'm not going to apologize for my career or my success." The audience was completely silent now, sensing that something had gone very, very wrong. This wasn't the lighthearted celebrity chat they'd expected. This was turning into something much darker and more personal. But Joy Behar was just getting started, and what she said next would push Julia Roberts past the point of no return. "You know what really bothers me about you Hollywood types?" Behar continued, her voice taking on a nasty personal tone that made everyone in the studio cringe. "You sit in your ivory towers, making millions while pretending to care about regular people. But when push comes to shove, where are you? I don't see you at rallies. I don't see you fighting for causes that matter. Instead, you're making another vapid movie about finding love in a coffee shop." Robert's jaw dropped. The personal attack was so unexpected, so vicious, that for a moment she was literally speechless. The camera caught every emotion flickering across her face: shock, hurt, and a rapidly building fury that anyone who knew Julia Roberts would recognize as dangerous territory. "Excuse me?" Roberts said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low register that sent chills through the studio. "You don't know anything about what I do with my time or my money. You don't know what causes I support or how I choose to make a difference in this world." But Behar wasn't backing down. If anything, Roberts' defensive response seemed to energize her, like a predator that had finally gotten its prey to show weakness. "Oh, please," Behar scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Spare me the secret philanthropy routine. If you were really making a difference, we'd know about it. That's how Hollywood works, isn't it? Everything's a photo op. Everything's about the image." The other View hosts were now actively trying to intervene. Whoopi was making hand gestures to the producers, clearly signaling for help. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Even Sunny Hostin, usually confident and composed, appeared frozen by the sheer awkwardness of what was unfolding. "Joy, maybe we should," Whoopi began. But Behar cut her off with a sharp look that could have melted steel. "No, Whoopi. I think our viewers deserve to hear some honesty for once," Behar snapped, never taking her eyes off Roberts. "We have celebrities on this show all the time, and they all say the same empty things. Oh, I just want to make people happy. Oh, I just want to spread joy. But what are you actually doing? What are you actually contributing besides pretty faces and fairy tale endings?" Roberts was now visibly shaking with anger. Her hands, which had been gesturing gracefully throughout her earlier stories, were now clenched into fists on the table. Her famous composure, built over decades of dealing with difficult interviews and invasive paparazzi, was crumbling in real time. "You want to know what I'm actually doing?" Roberts said, her voice rising despite her obvious efforts to maintain control. "I'm raising 3 children while maintaining a career. I'm supporting my family. I'm creating jobs for hundreds of people on every film I make. And yes, I'm making movies that bring happiness to people's lives because, believe it or not, that actually matters." "Oh, how noble," Behar replied with dripping sarcasm. "Making millions of dollars And calling it a public service. Do you even hear yourself right now? The audience was now completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold with the same horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Some viewers could be seen covering their mouths in shock, others shaking their heads in disbelief. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable television. This was character assassination happening live on national TV. Roberts leaned forward in her chair, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made the camera operators instinctively zoom in. When she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet but carried the force of a thunderclap. Joy, I don't know what your problem is with me, but this is completely unprofessional and frankly, it's cruel. I came here as a guest on your show, and you're treating me like I've personally wronged you somehow. What is this really about? For a split second, something flickered across Behar's face. Maybe surprise that Roberts was finally fighting back, maybe a moment of recognition that she'd gone too far. But instead of backing down, she doubled down, and what she said next would seal the deal on this disaster. You want to know what this is about? Behar leaned back in her chair with a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. This is about calling out the hypocrisy. This is about not letting celebrities waltz onto our show and feed our audience empty platitudes while they count their money. You represent everything that's wrong with this industry. The fake smiles, the manufactured warmth, the complete disconnect from reality. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Robert sat perfectly still for a moment, processing what had just been said to her on live television in front of millions of viewers. When she finally spoke, her voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a hurricane makes landfall. Joy, I have been nothing but respectful to you and this show since the moment I walked in here, Robert said, each word measured and deliberate. I don't know what kind of day you've had or what's going on in your life that makes you think it's appropriate to ambush a guest like this, but I'm not going to sit here and be your punching bag. Oh, so now you're the victim? Behar shot back, her voice reaching a pitch that made several people in the studio wince. Poor Julia Roberts, being asked to actually think about something beyond her next paycheck. Maybe if you put half as much effort into understanding the real world as you do into picking which mansion to buy next, you'd realize how out of touch you sound. That was it. That was the moment everyone would remember. The moment when Julia Roberts' legendary patience finally, completely snapped. Her face went through a series of expressions: hurt, rage, disbelief, before settling into something cold and final. She slowly reached up and unclipped her microphone, the small gesture somehow more dramatic than any screaming match could have been. The studio held its collective breath as Roberts carefully placed the microphone on the table in front of her, the tiny sound it made seeming to echo in the absolute silence. When she looked up at Behar, her expression was one of complete disgust mixed with something that looked almost like pity. But what happened next would become the moment that broke the internet and had everyone talking about the most explosive view confrontation in the show's history. Julia Roberts stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed to reverberate through the stunned studio. Every eye in the building was fixed on her as she smoothed down her blazer and looked directly into the camera, completely ignoring Joy Behar's presence as if she had ceased to exist entirely. Ladies and gentlemen watching at home, Roberts said, her voice crystal clear and carrying the kind of authority that comes from 3 decades of commanding movie screens. I want you to know that what you've just witnessed is not journalism, it's not entertainment, and it's certainly not how guests should be treated on any television program. The camera operators, recognizing television gold when they saw it, kept their lenses trained on Roberts as she delivered what would become one of the most replayed moments in talk show history. Behar, for the first time since the interview began, looked genuinely uncertain, as if she was finally realizing that her attack had backfired spectacularly. Joy, Roberts continued, now turning to face her tormentor with the kind of withering stare usually reserved for the worst movie villains. I don't know what kind of personal issues you're dealing with that made you think it was appropriate to invite me here just to tear me down, but I genuinely feel sorry for you. This isn't courage. This isn't truth-telling. This is just sad. The words hit like physical blows. Behar's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, clearly unprepared for Roberts to turn the tables so completely. The other View hosts sat frozen, watching their colleague get systematically dismantled by one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. You want to talk about being out of touch? Robert's voice grew stronger, more commanding with each word. You're sitting here attacking someone you've never met, making assumptions about my life, my values, and my character based on absolutely nothing. You don't know me, Joy. You don't know what I do when the cameras aren't rolling. You don't know what causes I support. You don't know how I raise my children or what I stand for. Behar tried to interrupt, opening her mouth to speak, but Roberts held up a hand that stopped her cold, a gesture so full of quiet authority that it silenced the entire studio. No, you don't get to talk anymore, Roberts said firmly. You've had your time to be cruel and unprofessional, and now it's my turn. You sit there every day judging people, tearing them down, thinking that your cynicism makes you somehow more authentic than the rest of us. But you know what's really inauthentic? Inviting someone into your house, and then attacking them for no reason other than your own bitterness. The audience was completely captivated, some people leaning forward in their seats, others with their hands clasped over their mouths in shock. This wasn't just a celebrity defending themselves. This was a masterclass in dignity under fire. You called my work vapid, and suggested that making people happy is somehow beneath you, Roberts continued, her voice taking on the passionate intensity that had made her a star. But you know what, Joy? The world is full of darkness and pain and genuine suffering. If I can make someone's day a little brighter, if I can give them 2 hours where they forget their troubles and remember what it feels like to believe in love and hope and possibility, then yes, I'm proud of that work. Even Whoopi Goldberg, who had seen everything in her decades in entertainment, looked genuinely moved by Robert's words. Sarah Haynes was visibly emotional, and even the usually composed Alyssa Farah Griffin was dabbing at her eyes. Roberts took a step closer to the table, her presence now dominating the entire set. You want to know about my contributions to the world? I've quietly donated millions of dollars to causes I believe in. I've supported educational programs, environmental initiatives, and humanitarian efforts around the globe. But unlike you, I don't think everything I do needs to be a performance for an audience. The silence in the studio was deafening. Behar, who had started this confrontation with such vicious confidence, now looked small and diminished in her chair. Her usual sharp retorts had completely abandoned her in the face of Robert's devastating rebuttal. But here's what really bothers me about this whole thing, Roberts said, her voice now carrying a note of genuine sadness. You could have used this platform to have a real conversation. You could have asked thoughtful questions about the industry, about the challenges of balancing career and family, about the responsibility that comes with influence. Instead, you chose to be mean for the sake of being mean, and that says far more about you than it ever could about me. Roberts picked up her purse from beside her chair, the simple action somehow conveying more finality than any dramatic gesture could have managed. When she looked back at the camera, her expression had softened slightly, but her voice remained unwavering. To everyone watching who came here expecting to see me humiliated or torn down, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of my life. And I'm proud that I try to put more kindness into this world rather than less. She glanced one final time at Joy Behar, who was staring at the table as if it might swallow her whole. I wish I could say the same about everyone. The studio erupted, not in applause, that would come later when viewers watched the clips online, but in the kind of stunned murmur that follows a genuine shock. Roberts began walking toward the exit, her heels clicking confidently against the studio floor, each step echoing like a punctuation mark on her devastating performance. Julia, wait! Whoopi finally found her voice, but Roberts paused only briefly at the edge of the set. Whoopi, you're a class act, and I have nothing but respect for you, Roberts said with genuine warmth. But I won't stay where I'm not treated with basic human decency. She looked back at Behar one final time. Joy, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you won't find it by tearing down other people. And with that, Julia Roberts walked off the View set, leaving behind a studio full of shocked faces, a hostile host who had been thoroughly demolished, and what would become one of the most talked-about television moments of the year. The remaining hosts sat in stunned silence for several long seconds before Whoopi finally managed to stammer something about going to commercial break. As the cameras finally cut away, one thing was crystal clear. Julia Roberts had just delivered the most dignified, devastating exit in talk show history, proving once and for all that sometimes the best response to cruelty is simply refusing to accept it.